spoke too soon.
All right, this is Mark has to sign. I don't think he signed that yet.
Okay, let's go back to Paula.
All right, super.
Okay.
So many.
You got it?
Right.
You ready, Lisa?
Yeah.
Okay. I'd like to call the final meeting here of 2023, the Board of Trustees for the Village of Cambridge. Meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Trustee Reinet.
Here.
Franklin.
Here.
Whitmer.
Here.
Hollenbeck. Here. Chris.
Here.
McNally.
Here. Okay. If we can stand and recite the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Lisa, can you
Yes.
explain proof of posting?
The notice was posted in the upper and lower levels at the Amundsen Community Center, the Cambridge Post Office, Badger Bank, and the village website.
Okay. We're going to go into public comment. Before we do, I received a call today from State Representative Barbara Dietrich, and she was feeling very much under the weather. So this has been canceled. She does want to come back to speak with us, and we have it set up for, I think, the meeting in January, the 9th. And so she is not here this evening. Is there, now we'll have open comments. Anybody from the audience that would like to speak on something that's not on the agenda or just in general? Okay, I'm not seeing a rush to the table. Final call? Okay, all right, seeing none, we're going to move on. Let's go to approval of the consent agenda. Anybody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Okay,
Second.
all right. Discussion, questions, concerns? Everything was recorded that we know of? We're all good? Okay, all those in favor of approval of the consent agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Carries. All right. Reports. Just want to talk about Cambridge Christmas, and I'm going to tie this in with the Cambridge Economic Development. I had a meeting. I don't know if any of you had a chance. I was Santa Claus came to town a couple of weeks ago, December 1st, and the fire department dropped them off. And the fire truck had all of the little lights on it, and St. Nick showed up. There was, I get this, Deerfield or Cambridge, the players, or is it Cambridge Deerfield?
Cambridge
CD, okay.
Players.
They were there, did a wonderful job. The Lions Club was, they were giving away hot chocolate, and then there was another group that was in a small little igloo thing, and they were selling treats and things like that. All of the lights along the street were placed. The luminaries stopped in to see some of the merchants, and sales were brisk, as they told me. So it was a really good turnout. About less than a week later, I was with the Cambridge, the business district, and they were talking about the parade. There were a couple of things that that they want to change. One is where Santa Claus is going to be, because he had come down the street and he was at the plow. There wasn't any music, but that wasn't the big issue. The big issue was people having to cross the street, and the kids, it was a kind of a long walk. They felt that it should really be up at Veterans Park. I was there with my wife, and she made an observation about an extension cord, because they were selling hot chocolate, and there was a cord dangling across the grass, and nobody fell, but it was one of those where you couldn't really see it. All in all, it was a fantastic evening, and we had even ordered up snow. And I got to tell you, that is tough to do. But we had an angelic type of snowfall with the Christmas carols, and it was a smashing success. Cambridge could not have looked better. I don't know if anybody out there had a chance to take it in, but it was one of those.
Having the
Hallmark
having the
movies.
snowfall as everybody was gathered in the park, it was like, oh my God, could this be more like a Hallmark
It was.
movie?
It was like a
or
Hallmark
what?
movie.
So yeah, it was lovely.
I explained that the village board of trustees was in charge of that, and I don't know if
Yeah.
they're buying it, but at least we explained that, and it really was. I'm going to tip my hat to everybody that had anything, because this is what makes small town America.
It's good for a couple votes.
And so that we have that, and then they're already working on it for next year. I talked to the Lions Club, and they were trying to, okay, how can we make it better? And the decorations look fantastic. The little
Outstanding.
reindeer that were up there, and it was just super special. Okay, now I'm going to call upon Mr. Todd Lord, Public Works. Todd, can you come up to the little table, introduce yourself?
Todd Lord, Public Works, Cambridge. Season's greetings all. And yeah, it was kind of neat. I did come through Cambridge, and it looked absolutely gorgeous when it was snowing, and to see people standing by the fire and that little igloo thing out there, and it was kind of cool.
Yeah, and I just remembered for our joint law enforcement, Joe was there. And he was parked across the street by the old, well, it's where the gym is right now. And he was monitoring. He got called away. There was an accident that happened while this was 20 minutes to go or something like that. But he did a good job with that. So thank you for getting all that taken care of there.
So for our leaf thing, it was 940 cubic yards, which is actually down about. People must have been taking some in or something, because we're down. Actually, it was like 980 last year. We're doing oil changes and maintenance on the trucks. We're ready to plow. I don't see snow happening for a long time either, but we're ready to go. We had a problem at Lagoon. Some contractor decided that it was okay to dump all kinds of. I mean, we're not talking a couple dump trucks. We're talking like 8 to 9 dump truck loads of trees down there that were huge, mammoth. And the Lions Club's cameras were out, and our camera was out because it's being charged. And so, right, I'm going in with locking up at night type thing after 2, and what the schedule reads. That's what we're going to go with.
Where does somebody get 8, 9 truckloads of I'm taking it as trunks or?
I imagine they were taking down a woods or something. I don't know, but yeah, that's what it looks like back there. If you went back there and looked, it's full. The whole tree branch area is full. These aren't tree branches. These are stumps. They're huge stumps. So, and huge. They were huge trees that they took down.
You can't run any of that. The stumps, obviously not, but through the grinder,
No, they're
bark
too
it
big.
up.
It's all too big. It's all
limbs.
pieces like this.
Oh my
Trunks.
gosh.
You know, that's the roundness of them. So,
Okay.
so we're working on knocking that down and trying to push it back without hurting the machinery. We've taken down some trees. Lion Energy has helped us with the ones that are close to the poles. So we're actually saving money by not hiring out to have trees taken down. We've taken down 5 trees off the terraces that were dangerous. So we're saving a few dollars there, which is a really good thing. And anything else from you guys?
You're all set for snow?
Oh, yeah, we're ready.
Okay.
We've got everything ready.
According to Channel 3000, no snow through the end of the year. Well,
That's-
maybe a little bit of snow, maybe like like 3 or 4 days from now. But other than that, nothing.
Yeah, I've heard long-term that
Yeah.
we might even be looking, going into January without any snow, so.
Wow.
Have you seen those trees leaning up against the power lines down at the Melster site? There's a bunch of them.
That's,
The Sun Prairie guys came through, and I think it's from when they came through and dredged everything out, but
no, it's not.
it's not,
It's not from dredging. And they didn't dredge, they just,
or whatever,
Remove-
they're
remove
moving
trees.
trees.
anyway, that is from not taking care of their lines for the cable or not cable, but the internet company, Frontier.
Oh,
Frontier's not taking care of their lines.
okay.
If you've ever been down Highway B, you can finally tell that they finally put poles up and put some of their lines up. Well, I've been calling them and letting them know since last year that there's trees laying on their lines.
Okay, so that's the
They're
responsibility.
slowly
Okay.
but surely falling to the ground now.
Yeah, looks like it's about to. Someone's
Yeah,
about to
it
snap.
had nothing to do with what was done down there.
Okay, so if those snapped, it wouldn't be like a. Would you think it'd be a danger to people walking
There's no
around?
electricity.
Okay, all right,
And
that was what I was
it's
getting at.
private property and nobody's
Gotcha.
supposed to be down there anyway.
Okay, cool. Thanks for getting out there and doing the leaves after it snowed. That was
Had
that
to.
saved us in Woodhaven. Yeah,
Had to.
I appreciate it.
Well, you gotta do what you gotta do.
Yeah, I know it was a little off schedule for you guys, but that was pretty
But
awesome.
that turns into another thing that we learned that the vacuum that we have to make sure that it's literally washed out and dried properly and over greased. The guy said we can over grease this thing because it has like a release on it.
Yeah.
And he said because that's probably what caused that is that you're not seeing that, and we're not the only ones that happened to. That bearing went out because they're all doing the same. They're all doing the same thing with them. They're using them when they're wet. It's should be able to use them wet, dry,
Yep.
and that's the way it's supposed to work. But we made sure that it was absolutely spotless this time around and greased real well. So
So the 940 cubic yards that you harvested, how long does it take before that it can actually be used?
a couple years.
2 years?
We actually have piles of black dirt
Okay.
in Lagoon and down at Melsters.
So people can just go and load up if they need it for mulch or whatever?
I'll remember that in the spring when I need to add some dirt to my gardens.
There you go. It's right down the road from you.
Yep.
But we have plenty. We have plenty of black dirt. Some guy came in and asked me if he could get about a couple 5 or 6 5-gallon buckets. I was like, sure. It's good nutritious dirt. For gardens, boom.
Well, if the same guy that shows up that dropped off the 8 loads of logs is now turning around and picking up the mulch, you'll let us know. Okay, I don't think that's gonna happen, but, All right, any other questions for Todd? All right.
Merry Christmas all.
The village looks,
Christmas.
the village looks great, Todd. You weren't here at the last meeting, you were ill, but the lights look fantastic, and thank you for the guys.
And that's the guys.
Yeah,
Cody's got that down, so that's Cody's.
Okay. Please pass on our,
Oh, and another thing,
Gratitude.
the lights, we had light problems out in Wheatland and Johnson. Those are all taken care of. Light over here is fixed now. Those are all fusible link problems with the lights.
it seems that there was one string that's not on the corner, but it's right in front of the Cambridge Market Cafe, a pole, and it's just not lit. But I don't know, I drove by it a couple times, and it doesn't have the white lights, but maybe it's blue and they're just subdued. I
They're
can't
blue.
tell. If you can just look at it to make
Yeah.
sure that that's.
Every light that has a snowflake on it is blue. I
Okay.
noticed that when I went down through there. What were the odds? So they did that pretty good.
Okay. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Appreciate it for
Thank you, Todd.
you and the team.
Yep.
Okay, village office updates. Lisa?
Adding to what you said, there were a number of Christmas events that same weekend held here and at the library. A lot of other people put more work in and other events as well.
Okay.
So to give kudos to all of them as well.
All right.
We've been working with Ellers, Quarles, and Brady on the water rate increases and bonds. Lisa will be doing a presentation on that coming up later in the agenda. Tammy has been working at all the special assessments into the counties, the mill rate worksheets, all the paperwork they need to get the tax bills prepared and printed. We should be receiving them on Wednesday, so they should be going out later this week. So thank you to Tammy. She's done a lot of work on that. A lot of insurance, annual reporting, flex renewals coming up. We've been working with different companies on those. Ongoing projects, Kashkanan Creek, EMS, sampling, Rockdale regionalization, Quick Trip. Some of those items will be on this agenda. Some will be on water and sewer next week. Election paperwork, reminder, non-candidacy papers are due December 12th. Nomination papers due January 2nd. For the elections, the notice of the vacant seat did go in the paper, on the website. We have had a few inquiries. A couple people have submitted their interests, so that will be on the January 12th agenda. We're beginning to work on different year-end reporting and projects that have to be done for different state agencies, federal government, so forth. So a lot of year-end stuff going on.
Okay. Questions for Lisa? Okay, Lisa, as always, there's always plenty going on. I get it. Okay, Treasury's report. We'll start with the bills. What have you got here, Tammy?
We had the first run of bills was $10,380.09. We did a second run, $442,546, and a third run is $71.60 for a total of $452,998.36.
Point of order here. Do we need to talk about item 8C before we approve these bills?
Yeah, I did see it. We had it in the bills. We can jump to that and take that item
Okay.
now
Since
because
that's a
it is.
big portion of the
Yes,
bill,
it
I
is.
was wondering if we,
Majority
okay.
of the bill.
I'd like to make a motion to
Yeah.
move item 8C up to current business.
Second.
Okay. Is this a roll call on this one? Okay,
Not
all
on
those,
that
all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, carries.
Um,
Loader rollout.
No, 8C. So the payment for well number 3 to Mid-City Corporation.
New agenda.
I did
New one out.
hand out today the paperwork. This came in late. That was part of the amended agenda.
This
It
one?
came in after the
Okay.
agendas went out, but Town and Country has signed off on the work done to date. It is all included, so to date, we've paid 1.097 million. This is 438. Balance would be 3.3 million. In the back of this, Water and Sewer typically gets these, but a weekly report just giving what work's been done, where they're at. Big thing is the masonry work is being done now on the outer. It has nice yellow weather material on it, so the masonry is going up. There's some slight delays in receiving some things still, but
It's not too cold out for masonry work?
apparently not. It's, I believe they expect to be done by Christmas.
And MSA looked through all of this stuff and they're
Yes,
in
they've signed
agreement?
off on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
We're 13,000 under budget right now. Is that what I'm seeing?
Yeah, we did have some, change orders that saved us money.
Cool.
So, yeah,
It's always good.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So what do we need here?
So we can do a
Motion?
motion to approve, payment number 5, and then it'll be included in the bill run as well, so, so,
I'll make a motion to pay Mid-City Corporation application number 5 in the amount of $438,234.05 for the well number 3 project.
I'll second.
All right, further discussion, if there's anything? Okay, seeing none, roll call, please.
Franklin.
Yes.
Whitwer.
Yes.
Hollenbeck.
Yes.
Christ.
Yes.
Reinig.
Yes.
McNeil.
Yes. All right.
So now I will go ahead and make a motion to pay the bills in the full amount of $452,998.36.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay.
Is that the total you have?
$452,998.36. Yep.
Okay. All right, we've got a motion and a second. Questions, concerns,
I
issues?
see we almost like $1,700 for computer support and maintenance. What's going on with that? Is that just our monthly
That's
bill?
part of our regular
Oh, that's the regular amount?
contract, and
Okay.
it is divided with water and sewer.
Okay. And then I see we did some work on the Public Works building, that steel with London Lumber. What was going on with that?
The repairs from that tree falling into the.
Oh, that's what it was for. Okay. That work out okay?
Yeah.
Sweet. All right, thanks.
Sealed off.
Sweet, yeah, good.
All right, anything else? Okay, we've got proper procedure. Call for roll call, please.
Whitwer.
Yes.
Hollenbeck.
Yes.
Christ.
Yes.
Reinig.
Yes.
Franklin.
Yes.
McNeil.
Yes. Okay, now we'll go back again to you here, Tammy. Anything else on our finances that we should be aware of there?
Just like Lisa said, the tax bills will be going out by the end of this week. So I've been pretty much spending most of the last couple weeks getting all of the paperwork together and getting that together for both counties.
Are we including some other documents in the tax bill like we have in the past? What's going in there?
Tammy's been working the 2 pie charts that we typically have, the breakdown of the tax bill
Good.
by the taxing jurisdiction, and then the pie chart of the village portion and the departments, how it breaks out.
Excellent. Good.
Then we'll also include the dog licenses and the trash and recycling schedule.
So how
Great.
did the mill rate change this from the previous year?
The total mill rate went from, it went up like 0.6% for all taxing jurisdictions. Was it
For
from
the-
18.8 to 19.3 or something?
That's the village's portion? Or
That's the whole
oh,
portion.
how about the village's portion?
I'm gonna say the villages went up roughly 8%.
8%?
Mhm.
Okay, Chris?
Lisa, I recall that towards the end of the year, we usually receive some kind of safety grant of some sort. Did we get that this year?
We had gotten a safety grant earlier in the year.
Okay.
The league insurance does them periodically.
Oh, okay.
The last time it did cover a 2-year period, I
All right.
believe. Yeah, so those are when they
When they, okay.
have extra,
All
when they put that out. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions here for
And we
Tammy?
did get from them the $10,000 safety grant that we had gotten a couple of years ago
All right.
unexpectedly.
Anything else? Okay, all right, thank you, Tammy. Appreciate that. Let's go on to new business. We're going to start with the presentation of the 2022 audit that's conducted by Ballman and Associates,
Yep.
and their representatives here. If you could come up, have a seat, introduce yourself.
Here, okay?
Yep, that sounds
I'm
good.
Eric Davidson. I'm a principal at Bauman Associates, and I have almost 30 years of experience in public accounting, well over 25 with working with municipalities. So we came in last year, our bid was accepted, so last year was the first year we did the audit, just to clarify and point out. So prior to that, another firm had done it, so I guess that's introducing myself and our firm. We do work quite extensively with municipalities. I'm really familiar with municipality law. We attend regular meetings with the League of Wisconsin Municipalities, and we were just in Green Bay attending some of those workshops in the fall. So with that, I think I'll start presenting. Does everyone have copies of the deliverables?
So I did give you the full audit as well as the letters. I had emailed them, but did give you hard copies as well.
So there are two letters that accompany the audit. And the first one I'm going to go over is, it's, at the top, it's to the Village Board of Trustees. And it is about a 6-page document with some schedules at the end. These are the required communications to the village board at the conclusion of the audit. So this shouldn't be anything different than what you had received from, the prior audit firm. This is all according to audit standards. So the bold headings are required communication items. Significant audit findings, that's, there are subcategories there. Qualitative aspects of accounting practices. This is where we tell you if there are any new accounting standards, and during the year, there was a new accounting standard adopted, leases. And what that resulted for the village was there were 3 leases where you are actually the lessor that are on your books on the full accrual financial statements. And those are noted further within notes 1 and 7 to the financial statements. So what that did is it required you to record a lease receivable for leases, 2 cell tower leases, and then some land. So you basically have to show that on your records as a receivable and then deferred revenue. That's really what that new standard did. You didn't have any leases where you were leasing as an expense that qualified for this standard. So that was a change this year. And that does not have any effect on aid or anything like that, if that's kind of, a next logical thought that you might have. That was really the only accounting standard that was different or adopted during the year. Any questions?
Yeah, you mentioned that 2 cell towers and some land.
Yes.
Can, I know the one cell tower, that was the county of what, Jefferson? And then is there another cell tower on top of the water tower? And then the land, I'm not sure what that would be.
We lease the land next to the water tower, and I believe this is what it's referring to, look next to the water tower, that there's another tower on. We
Okay.
lease that, I'm guessing.
Yeah. So
Been a while since
so,
we-
So sure, the land lease is, it's an agreement with Jefferson County.
Oh,
That's the land, and
That's the land.
it's got a
Okay.
receivable amount of about 55,000. Short of going into my file, and I can certainly, just to preface this too, if you have questions for follow-up,
Yeah.
I'm more than happy to follow up on that. But as part of what we did for the audit is we came in, kind of requested leases, and through that inventory process of gathering leases, that was one of them. The cell tower leases, I believe one is with Verizon and one is with US Cellular.
Okay.
That's what we have in the audit.
All right. I'll talk with you afterward. I'm just curious what the rationale was that with those, what FASB was trying to do.
Yeah, full disclosure.
Yeah.
It's actually GASB standards, Government Accounting Standards Boards. So instead of just showing the, and you still do show the revenue, it's just you've got commitments to have that income over a period of time. So it's recorded as a lease receivable, right? So the offset is on the balance sheet as well as deferred revenue.
Right.
Really put these items that are longer term commitments to receive the money on the balance sheet is really the biggest effect. And then some disclosure of what's being put on there.
Okay.
It makes your balance sheet look a little heavier on the asset side and the deferred revenue liability side.
Yeah, because you're moving it from an operating lease to a capital lease.
It's not
Kind
a
of.
capital lease, it's just,
All right.
The details them out on page 32, if you want to see the
Yeah,
detail.
maybe take that offline, because we don't need to learn all about
Well,
government accounting here for the rest of us.
Bill and I find it to be fascinating.
Well, I'm sure you two do. I'm sure you two are fascinated by
We
it.
could get into
A
it.
little less than, yeah.
and I would be definitely happy to expand on that further, maybe offline, but this,
Okay, that's fine.
it could get rather lengthy.
All right.
And we would appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, keep going.
Okay, very good. So back to the letter. That was the big change for the year. And that, we found that affected a lot of clients actually, and that's what was on the books. And when we were going into it, we thought there might be other leases where you're leasing maybe property, maybe a vehicle, maybe office equipment. But those were immaterial. It was really where communities had cell towers. That was the biggest thing that got put in the book. So it's not that uncommon as we went through adoption, just for point of reference. Moving through accounting estimates, within the financial statements on the government-wide full accrual financial statements, as well as the utilities, depreciation is a pretty big estimate, and that's on there. It's within the notes. We review the factors for utility, Wisconsin PSC Water Department. They have benchmark rates. We make sure those are getting used. The sewer, we look at those rates and determine that those all line up with industry standards for that type of plant. So we did assess those and found that they were reasonable. Item number 2, the net pension asset information related to GASB 68. So through your involvement in the Wisconsin retirement system, you're subject to GASB 68 like other communities. We have to take your share of the net pension asset or liability at the end of the measurement period that WRS uses, which was December 31st, 2001. It was a net pension asset. You record that on your books at a pro rata share, and that is on the statements of net position and the statements of activities. That standard puts those on the balance sheet, and it's your share, but obviously it's a cost sharing system. You could have employees that come and go. Everyone has to do that and put that on their books. It makes it look a little bit much, to be quite honest with you, but that's what GASB 68 requires. And that is all detailed in, it's either note 9 or 8 to the financials. I can go over that. And there's no change. That has always been on there, so that is nothing new. Difficulties encountered in performing the audit. We didn't encounter any difficulties. Admittedly, we got a later start. There were some things going on here where a former employee, unfortunately, had passed away, and that got a later start in the audit. We were new, kind of getting used to working with Lisa and Tammy. But I think once we did get started, things went really well. So the difficulties encountered in the audit, this is where we weren't getting invoices from someone or something to that effect. We would put that in the letter. And to be quite honest, if it ever got to that point, I would be reaching out to a board member prior to that, but we would also need to put it in the letter. So that's, to me, that's more what that really means from a professional standards point of view. Corrected and uncorrected misstatements. So this is where we discuss any adjustments that are kind of outside of what's normally expected for the audit. When we got in and started looking, we did note one material adjustment to adjust some of the payroll tax liabilities at the beginning of the year. We noticed that when tying out the payroll for the year. Our team members noticed that, and that was an adjustment that was made as a prior period adjustment.
Were there any penalties with that? Was that just strictly our records and your records?
I think that was just an accounting issue. Now, I'm not aware of any penalties. Lisa, I think it was more of a timing thing and necessitating the prior period adjustment.
Okay.
So we
So
weren't aware.
so it wasn't accrued in the previous year?
Yeah, yeah. So in order to get the current year correct, we had to do a prior period adjustment. And I can't, again, we didn't audit last year. We can't really speak to that, but that's what we found in the course of working through that. That's what was proposed. So payroll accrual liabilities are all adjusted properly at the end of 22, starting out 23 pretty well. The attached schedule summarizes uncorrected misstatements. There were just some minor differences with the accounts receivable subsidiary listing and what was tied to the general ledger. My understanding is that those are going to be looked at and reconciled in 2023. They were not material, so from an audit standpoint, we note that and move on. Overall, it
So
was reasonable.
when we do that, will we be doing that monthly, or how often are we going to reconcile those?
And it depends, we'd have to look, part of it is some things in discussions have been historically coded in the wrong spot. We're changing the coding procedures to
Yeah.
make sure they're coded in the correct spots and so forth. We do every bill run, look at the bills and, you know, so.
But the
we're-
question is, how often is the reconciliation going to be completed? I mean, it should be done monthly.
Monthly, yeah,
Okay.
monthly bank reconciliation.
And you bill quarterly, right? Or
For utility,
utilities?
it's monthly.
It's monthly? All right, okay. Yeah, then it should follow that frequency, for sure. Again, just to preface this, coming in, it was, I mean, we kind of came in new and it really got a late start. So, you know, we point these out in an audit, things that, you know, are differences and can be improved. But as far as completing the audit and being able to opine on it, it's reasonable, just to reiterate that point. Disagreements with management. This is where we had, you know, any disagreements where maybe, you know, what we thought should be done, Lisa or Tammy went outside of that, got a second opinion. It's pretty uncommon for a municipality. That's more for like a publicly traded company where they're really looking for certain results. We didn't notice, or we did not note any disagreements with management. Management representations. At the conclusion of the audit, we obtained the required management representation letter. We're just stating that. Management consultations with other independent accountants. This again, if there was a second opinion on something we as auditors thought or were pretty insistent on, and a second opinion was sought, we would note that here. That's not an issue. To our knowledge, that did not occur. Other audit findings or issues, kind of a catch-all. If there's anything outside of the required communication, we note that there. Other matters, there are required supplementary schedules here. They're noted here. The budgetary comparison schedule for the general fund and the library fund, as well as required supplementary information relative to the village's involvement with WRS and GASB 68. Any questions on that letter? There's a lot there. There's a lot of kind of standard boilerplate stuff, but just kind of a walkthrough of that letter.
Can
Right.
you, I'm just going to go right to the auditor's report.
Absolutely, we certainly can
Okay.
do that. You,
All right.
you steer me if I'm getting too down in the weeds.
Okay, well,
I'll get it.
I'm particularly interested in your explanation of the second paragraph of the auditor's report.
The one that starts with "in our opinion"?
Yes. Just what does that mean?
That means that we've issued a clean opinion on the financial statements.
Okay. You have found it, you have not found anything? Statements are in accordance with, in all
They
material
are,
respects?
they are reasonably
Okay.
stated.
Okay.
And I want to make that point too, that an audit provides reasonable assurance. And that is a recent change to audit reports in general, and that's noted on page 2. Just to avoid any confusion of thinking that someone came in and audited and they're providing absolute assurance. But yes, you are correct in that statement. That's what that opinion means. And with governmental statements, there's actually opinions because all of these different statements are opinion units. So
Okay. Any other questions for our auditors?
I had a couple,
Yeah.
believe it or not.
Oh,
Is there
we're
more
all
you wanted-
shocked, Bill. We're all shocked.
Good. On
Is there more
page,
you wanted to present first? Did you have more to present
Oh.
before we jump into?
I mean, I really
Questions per
don't.
se?
It's a
Or-
large report, and I
Mhm.
think Mark's point is well taken. You know, our opinion on it was clean after adjustments, after working with management and going through the detail and performing our audit procedures, which included confirming accounts with the bank, you know, reviewing loan documents and amortization schedules, reviewing minutes of committee meetings, reviewing invoices, observing and requesting documentation of policies and procedures. So I don't.
Bill, you had some questions.
yeah, if you jump to page 6, if you don't
Absolutely.
mind. So that's the balance sheet of the various funds. And if you go down to the bottom section, unassigned
Yes.
fund balance.
Mm-hmm.
So go across the page and they're all negative, which says we've, as a village, have outspent our resources.
I think that means that your fund balance at this point in time is negative. There are some things up top that, you know, there's cash due from other funds, but yeah, I mean, that means your fund balance is negative. You
So
are
when I
correct.
saw that, I was pretty concerned.
Yeah,
It says you're, I mean, if it was a business, we're losing money. When you lose money, you go out of business. So is that proper to have concerns along those lines?
we didn't judge there to be any going concern
Okay.
issues with the village. I believe, you know,
I guess,
looking at the general fund, there was a large amount. It came into the year positive.
yeah, I mean,
and-
3 years ago, the fund balance was over 400,000 for the
Yeah.
general fund. In the 3 years, we spent $400,000.
There were some expenditures that were over budget for sure, and that is shown in that. To your point, there's a schedule in there, budget to actual.
And then we kind of had this debate at our last meeting, so kind of an accounting question. If you go over to the capital projects fund column,
Sure.
and on the top, the first number is $336,000, and it's due from other government agencies.
That is a receivable that is due from, I believe, is it the DOT for the bike trail? DNR, I'm
Dade
sorry.
County.
Okay.
Um,
So those are funds that are receivable that have been recognized as revenue that the village will be getting
Yep.
into that fund because the expenditures were in there. And that's, I believe, part of what's,
So if those would do a what if those would have been paid during 2002, the period of this audit, that accounts receivable balance would have been 0.
And the cash,
And then the cash would have been $336,000 higher.
and that actually, because there's pool cash used, there's negative cash allocated here. That is put back on the balance sheet in
Yep.
the due to other funds. So
Yeah.
that would have been less, the
Yeah.
415, 462. That will
Yeah.
go down
And on
as
the
the
general,
cash is received.
the
yes.
general fund cash in the bank of 587 would have been 900-some thousand dollars. Oh, correct?
If it was then turned around and paid back
Yeah,
to the general
which
fund.
probably
Yeah,
would
yep,
have been done.
Yes,
I
yeah,
would assume so.
you're correct, yeah.
Okay. So last council meeting, it was decided to put that revenue, the 330,000, what was put into the 23 budget as a revenue item. And it's also, because they didn't collect all, they put 200,000 in the 24 budget as a revenue item.
Okay,
And my argued you can't do that because the county is going to treat it as against the receivable, and you can't count it as revenue to offset current future year expenses.
it is not, it's already been recognized as a revenue item, therefore it's a receivable, so
so
I would
both
agree
of-
with that. It's
so when you do
not
the
gonna
audit-
show up in revenue.
When you do the audit this year, you won't count that as revenue.
No, it's,
So we'll have
it's,
another $300,000 gap in our fund balance for that, plus another 200,000 for the coming year's fund balance. So we're going to be a $500,000 negative fund balance at the end of next year if our budgets are perfect, which our budgets haven't been. We've overspent for 3 years in a row. So we're looking at basically a 5-year period, $1 million swing in our reserve. Disagree with that comment?
certainly the last year, and if you go back down to the next page, I mean, the current year, general fund was a deficiency of revenues under expenditures of,
I know I'm catching you
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
cold here, but
I mean, I can't
this
speak to
has
the
been
other
a,
two.
I've been
yes,
singing this
the
song
fund
for quite a
balance is-
while. And
The
not
fund
getting any-
balance is going down, right?
I'm not getting any traction, so I just wanted to get your opinion. 'Cause
And the reality is on the general fund side, you're really kind of boxed in with levy limits.
Yeah,
And your state aid, that only goes a certain way.
but we're also not a federal government that can just spend money we don't have.
You are constrained as any
Yeah.
agency with its revenues, yes.
Alright.
And I can't speak to what exactly has been in the expenditures. There were some larger expenditure items this year. In the general government section, there was, I think, about 45,000 in, I think, legal for solar. I think that was an item in there for sure. The payroll taxes were all put to that function, the payroll taxes that apply to the general fund. So that is kind of making the general government department look worse. There were some, I think there were about 45,000 in engineering invoices in the public works function for various projects paid to MSA. I think it was State Highway 134. That's contributing to it. But yeah, I mean, that's how you get there, by having your expenditures outstrip your revenues. Yeah, you're correct.
When would you have a concern about going concern? You mentioned there isn't any right now, but if you have these losses, as Bill is saying, at what point do you start to, oh, wait a minute, this can't continue on? And we talked about this, and it's timing, and there's stuff that the state is doing, and it's very difficult, but I just can't believe we can keep going on with this.
Right now, I'm not concerned, but you're right. I mean, you start looking at this and you've got to get concerned. But what can you do from a general fund standpoint, right? You've got the capital projects fund is really the capital outlay arm of the general fund. And you do have statutory borrowing capacity, which is unfortunately what most municipalities are seeing for their capital needs that are not, financed through a utility, general fund. That's available. Borrowing money to pay for capital projects, to pay for road improvements, to pay for an end loader or something like that. That's probably going to have to be looked at. And if you're using a financial advisor, a lot of times they will come up and advise you to have a 5-year capital plan, for instance. to address that. But really, the operating expenditures in the general fund should be covered by your current revenues. Yes, the operating, not capital.
This was part of the discussion we had where being more cognizant of where things are being coded. So the engineering expenses are coded to the capital project, not in the general fund and so forth.
Sure.
So are things that we're looking at and working on.
Things that were, I wasn't here in 2022, but things that were paid for from like the general fund that maybe, like you said, it should have been a loan that kind of put us behind. Those kinds of things.
Okay.
And I would add even to the point of having some common expenses and seeing which funds they should be allocated to, because your utilities are showing a decent amount of operating income. So I don't know if things need to be looked at from an allocation standpoint of a supply type item, and do things just maybe get allocated to the general fund by default, maybe as a past practice when they could be allocated out.
As an example, liability insurance and stuff, we have now found had been all going to general rather than being broken down by department, including utility. So there's numerous things that we have found after discussing with comments that we're looking at how it should be done differently to,
It should help the bottom line for us at least a little bit.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Bill, anything else?
Page 24 talks about custodial risk and the fact we have compensating balances in our cash fund. And, question there I have for you, Eric. You talk about, the footnote says basically there's no concern, and there's 962,000 some change. Yet when I look at the balance sheet, there's $2.5 million of cash. So I'm trying to see, how do I reconcile this footnote to the $2.5 million in cash that's sitting in the bank on page 4?
So are you there's also cash noted on page 14, which is the property tax fund.
Okay,
On page 14,
all right.
are you including that cash?
No, I'm just looking at page 4. So if I added that cash, wouldn't we be at 5 million then or something? 4 million?
And the disclosure you're looking at, Bill, that is the bank balance, I believe.
At that point, just at a
Not
point
the
in time?
not the carrying value, which is, let's say you have a checking account.
Yeah,
So you might have a bank balance that's higher and some outstanding checks. The disclosure you're seeing on 24 is the bank balance. That's the required disclosure. It relates to your credit risk of how much cash you
Yeah.
have at financial institutions that is not covered by FDIC insurance, state guarantee fund, or collateral agreements.
so the 2.4 million on page 4, you have no concerns that were collateralized on that? Is that what you're saying?
It's just a disclosure. There are collateral agreements,
Okay,
but this much of the cash that's in the bank at 12/31/22 is over that amount of collateral. And I don't know how often the bank looks at that. Usually banks to monitor that
We
monthly.
do adjust the collateralization during tax time. They do raise it and then lower it once tax payments have been made to the taxing jurisdictions. So they do monitor it throughout the year and change it basically on the tax collection periods.
They had special
So-
insurance that they purchased.
so if the
Just
bank
for
would have
the-
gone out of business on December 31st, we had basically $2.5 million on page 4 plus $1.4 million on page 6. So we had
I think the
$3.8 million,
exposure,
so our
I think the
exposure,
exposure is the 962,806.
well, that's the exposure?
That's the exposure.
Oh,
That's what the purpose of the disclosure is.
so if the bank went out of business, this village would be on the hook for $1 million.
That's, as we saw the documentation, yeah.
Is that normal?
There are
Okay.
several communities that don't keep up with these. There are several communities that don't even seek any collateral agreements in addition to what's covered by FDIC and the state guarantee fund, which is 400,000, and if banks or financial institutions start failing, all sorts of entities are going to make a run on those funds. So, yes,
So would you advise us to try to get that increased?
I think we talked about getting those up to date monthly, because the banks are willing to do that usually. I'm guessing, like Lisa said, it's tax time. You see a spike in those collections in
That's what
December
I'm
in
thinking,
cash.
the cash balance probably isn't that high relative to some types of parts of the year.
But there should be a monitoring mechanism with the bank, and that should easily be something they can do. So to that point, you know, it is something
So
that,
it's something we
that
should
should
keep
be
on
looked
top
at.
of as
Yes, I
an
think so.
entity and
Yep.
make sure we don't get caught with our pants
Yep.
down, so to speak.
That's on us then to do that.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Anything else?
Let me look, got a couple others, but I think I can do more.
While you're looking, does anybody else have anything else that they have questions about, would like to ask?
I'm looking at this, and thanks for coming out tonight. I'm looking at
Yeah.
this inadequate segregation of duties.
Yeah.
And I think ever since I've been on the board, we've always had this hit against us. And can you just speak to the commonality of this particular?
I can, and it is common for a village your size, right? You have two people financially, internally, that you can segregate duties. I mean, ideally, you would want the custody of an asset like cash separated from the ability to record it, right? The authorization to go in the records, record it, you know, along with the authorization, you know, the ability to write a check, approve a check, that type of thing. So we look at those things, and that's part of what we come in and we see the duties for cash receipts and that type of cycle. Utility billing, we look at cash disbursements in general and expenditures. Payroll, that's another cycle we look at. And what we usually see is that the board will review disbursements, as I observed here. You review it and approve it. That's kind of a good mitigating control. But you're right, that exposure is there. And that is common. It's very common.
What do other communities do to mitigate that?
Board involvement,
Yeah, okay.
oversight, question things, look at invoices, and I heard someone question, you know, you questioned that item, whatever, you moved it up. And I think you had a comment about being under budget and those types of things. I think those are good controls.
Other communities hire financial advisors, and we have this trend of negative fund balance year after year. You know, to try and break that trend, would it be worthwhile for us to do that on a quarterly basis? Do you think?
And by financial advisor,
It's kind of
exactly how do you, I guess I'm just trying to clarify
kinda
how you
the-
mean that term.
an advisor come in here on every quarter and just track what we're doing to make sure we're not trending into the negative month after month.
And when I think of financial advisor, I think more of like getting access to public finance markets and coming up with capital.
Kind of what I see
improvement plans.
Ayler's doing for us.
Yeah, we're already doing
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
We
So
certainly
Ayler's
help
already done it?
clients with that outside of the audit too, as far as almost making sure the records are straight, so what you are all seeing at the board level is accurate and up to date. Because clerk treasurers, they wear a lot of hats, and background is usually not as deep into accounting as what you would see like on an audit report here with almost 100 GASB standards and complying with that, so.
So, I guess, Tammy, question for you and Lisa. You know, since I've been on the board, you've only seen 2 treasury reports, and we haven't gotten one for months. And the 2 I saw were full of questions and holes and errors. Are you guys getting, and what you told me, Tammy, you're still new, trying to figure out what's going on, getting the audit done.
Started doing the
Are you,
budget process.
are we, are you close now to having this year's done? Do we need some resources from these guys to come in and help get this year's financials, at least so we can get a statement as a, because I have no idea where we're at
No,
for
I
this
could-
year.
I could print out a statement
But is it accurate?
anytime. It's more accurate now after we've
Okay.
done the journal entries
So you don't think
through
you need
Bauman for
support or
2022.
help from them to get the,
No.
okay.
I mean, and I'm gonna be starting getting things together for the 2023 audit. But now that 2022 is done and
Yeah.
we've made adjusting journal entries and things like that, I'm
Yeah.
fairly confident now that
Yeah,
things
you
are
had
in
a
the
lot of
right
catch up
spots.
and a lot of mess to clean up, I understand. But,
What's that?
you know, I know you had a lot of catch up to do, and I'm just wondering if you needed more
Right,
support.
and having them help do that with the journal entries and everything, you know, now I know what to expect now, what they need going forward. And they've offered assistance too, if I need help in looking at things or what reports to print out.
Yeah, and I think to Bill's point, we're available to do that, you know, kind of outside of the scope of the audit, but with guideposts in place so we don't start auditing our own work. We're truly using our knowledge to help you get records. And I think that's a good way to leverage it to get accurate financial information.
And I do plan on doing the budget versus actual. I had started out doing that, and then we started with all the budget process and everything, and that just kind of fell to the wayside just because all of the numbers weren't completely accurate from 2022.
So
So-
hopefully first of the year now we can start.
Yeah, and it'll
Thank-
probably be like the second meeting of the month again.
Yeah, good.
I'll give you the budget versus actual and whatever other reports, you know, you want, or I can come up with some other things to give you.
Okay, did you have any other
Yeah,
questions?
and then just moving forward for next year, I know this was a tough year with a lot going on.
Yeah.
But when can we expect our audit for
A
next year?
lot sooner.
Okay.
That's fair.
Where-
No,
where we
no
can
one
use it-
wants to see this
Right.
thing next December.
So
I
we can
agree.
use it going into the audit
Yeah,
finance meetings.
And we'll be working with scheduling the audit, and what we're trying to do is, we're trying to work with this concept of audit ready, so everything's ready to go, we're ready to audit it, and that we turn that thing around ideally in a month after that.
Okay.
There needs to be some time, these reports are voluminous, there's
For
some
sure.
back and forth, but yes, nothing, I'd like to see it done no later than May, I'm just,
That would be great.
you
That
know,
would be.
it
Well,
it
there'll
really
be
should
lots
be,
of things that you won't need this year because we did the background work.
exactly.
Being your initial year.
Right.
Yes.
So-
Exactly, and it will be much. Last year was so unusual to get started so late. No one wants that. It will be out sooner.
And difficult for us learning the platform they were working off of, how to get them the information they needed. And
I could train.
Okay.
Train
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
the floor.
All right. Any other questions for the auditor? Okay, does anybody care to make a motion to approve the presentation here, the audit that Bauman has performed?
I'll make the motion,
Okay. Approve the audit.
approve the audit as presented.
Okay.
I'll second.
All right, further discussion? Seeing none, call the matter to vote. All those in favor of approval of the audit that was conducted by Bauman and Associates, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, now I have one follow-up question. We've approved it, and this is for Lisa and Tammy. We've heard from the auditors. Do you have any concerns about how the auditors worked with you? Anything that we as a board should be aware of?
No,
No, not at all. I actually look forward to
yeah.
getting going on 2020.
Not that we've laid the groundwork yet.
I could probably train you on inflow now, so
Yeah, like we said, it was a
it's
rocky
actually
start.
easy.
And hard for Tammy stepping in as a new treasurer, not being here. To know,
During that
you know,
audit
to try
period.
to say, why was this done in 2022, how and why, and not having anybody to be able to ask.
Right.
I did the best I could filling in what I knew, but didn't know all the answers. So
Conference
we
calls
worked.
and-
We had a
Okay.
lot of conference calls, a lot of back and forth, you know.
And we have a 3-year engagement with Bauman, correct? This is the first year, so there's 2 more years?
I believe it is.
Okay.
That is correct. Yeah, we look forward to it too.
Yeah.
The second year is always easier, is getting to know
Not as scary as I
specifically
thought.
what's going on with your community. So, for
All
sure.
right, Eric, thank you for coming by and
Thank you.
spending some time with us. We
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay.
And if there are any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out.
Oh, I'll
Thank
get
you.
them.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move on to item, let's see, where are we at here? B. I'm looking at this. Village of Cambridge Resolution 2023-12. And our refunding bond. Who's taking this? You can
I am.
introduce yourself.
Hi, Lisa Trobotuski. I am one of the financial advisors for the village. You're used to seeing Brian. Brian had another meeting tonight, so I'm covering this item. I did have a packet that I placed in front of you. I'll just quickly go through that. Just know that this has to deal with that ineligible portion for the Safe Drinking Water Fund loan. So we got the finalized rate from Huntington Bank yesterday, and they went down to 5.2. They initially started with 5.27, but Brian got them to go down to 5.2. So every little bit helps. The pre-sale was estimated at 5.6, so the markets have seen decreasing interest rates, so that has helped. You're seeing a savings of approximately $43,000 with the lower interest rate. So tonight, we're recommending that you adopt the resolution. There'll be a term sheet that needs to be signed, and both of those will need to be turned into Corals and us. One item that we wanted to discuss is a paying agent, which is a third party that helps ensure that payments are made timely. That definitely helps during any transition in staffing, and just it's a low cost. You can contract with Bond Trust Services to do that. We would just need to know that before closing on December 21st. And then part of this, because this has to deal with your water rate case, we are getting ready to file that hopefully next week. We just wanted to touch base where we're at. So there is no action item on this, as it is not an agenda item, but it has to deal with the debt, so we're just going to review that with you. So we completed that phase one back in April of 2023, where we did the long-range cash flow analysis. We were showing about a 77% increase to water revenue, and that was at a 6.2% rate of return. And so now we're completing that phase two of completing the application. There's just a few outstanding items, so there might be some changes in what we show you tonight, but it is mostly accurate and should be around that amount. So it does say in the packet that the consensus to file, but it's not on the agenda, so there is no action tonight. However, we are going to recommend passing a resolution in your January meeting to freeze the pilot payment, and we'll go through that as we go through the presentation. So the first, that initial rate application results, that first table that we're looking at. So the most recent rate of return that we've seen is 6.8%. So if we filed the application as it is with a 6.8% and did nothing with the pilot payment, you'd be looking at almost 97.5% increase. And then just know that this is for a test year 2024, so that's assets through December 31st of 2024, so that includes your well project and any normalization of operating expenses like water tower paintings, any main maintenance. So if you turn to the future projection PSC math long-range cash flow analysis, so that's where that 97.5% increase, or approximately, but the cumulative increase, because you did a simplified rate increase for 8%, that is actually about 105.5% increase. So when we evaluate that, we try to see if those rates are really too high with that rate of return that the PSC is currently at. So yes, that does exceed the cost of your existing and future interest expenses on debt. We want to see approximately 1.25 for this all-in debt coverage. So that when you have revenue debt, you have a debt coverage that you need to maintain, but we want to make sure that you're covering your revenue debt, your general obligation debt, and your pilot payment. So we want to see that all-in debt coverage at 1.25. With the PSC math, you're at about 1.4. So there's some options that you have, and that is either reducing or freezing that pilot payment that we're going to talk about, and then requesting a lower rate of return. So the next long-range cash flow chart is freezing the pilot payment. So that reduces that increase to about 96.2%, or the cumulative of 94.2%. And that pilot payment, per the 2024 budget is at $92,000, so we would freeze that by a resolution that you would need to pass in your January meeting. And that is leaving that at a 6.8% rate of return that the PSC is currently at. However, another option, as we can prove to the PSC, argue a lower rate of return. It is not guaranteed. They would have to approve that. So the pilot payment you can do. That's an option that you can absolutely do. It doesn't require approval from the PSC, but arguing a lower rate of return does. But we provide information such as the chart that shows that lower rate of return, your revenues would still be sufficient to make your debt payments, cover your operating and maintenance, your pilot, and then have some extra.
Can you do a brief explanation what the pilot program is?
So that's their payment in lieu of taxes. So the water utility has to pay the general fund for the assets that they have, the utility financed assets. And that changes every year. So as your assets either grow or decrease, and here you're going to have a large increase in assets with your well project. And then it depends on what your assessment ratio is, what your tax rate is. So there's a calculation that happens to determine the amount that's owed. So you can rely either every year for that calculation to be determined what the amount is going to be, or you can freeze that. And that is right now budgeted at $92,000. So we want to make sure that we would leave that, because that is revenue to your general fund. So you don't want to just set it to zero if you can't supplement that revenue to your general fund with other sources.
The 92 is in addition to what we're already getting?
92, I think it was about like 87,000, but it's going to increase because it's based on asset additions and any tax rate and
It
assessment.
increases to 92 or it increases by 92?
No, it increases to 92,000.
Just
So it's
about-
like approximately 88,000, increasing it to 92, but then freezing it at that. If we didn't, you'd look at, I think it's like 160. It would increase to like 167,000. So that's where, yes, it's extra money for the general fund, but that makes your rates have to increase as much. So this is what the general fund is currently receiving for the 2024 budget. So we would freeze it at that. So the general fund would continue to receive that 92,000, but then if we freeze it, then you don't have to increase your rates as much to make that payment. Does that make sense? Okay. The following page just shows that impact on the average residential user, which you've seen before. We show what the increase is with the 8%, and then if we would be able to get down to that 70, almost 74% by freezing the pilot payment and arguing for a lower rate of return. It just shows the impact of what that would be. And then again, we have the rate comparison that you've seen before, and that is showing with the almost 74% increase. So when we file the application, we are going to file it assuming that you would pass the resolution to freeze the pilot payment. So yes, you still have to pass that. We are going to file it as such. If for some reason you would decide not to do that, we'd still be in the middle of the process and can make that change. But that is our recommendation, and that is how we're going to file it, because we want to file it before the end of this year, just so we can get the ball rolling, because you do need to show that your rates can be sufficient when you close on your Safe Drinking Water Fund loan. So we show some pros and cons for each of these. So arguing a lower rate of return, while you get a smaller rate adjustment, you would probably qualify for simplified sooner. And again, this is not guaranteed. The PSC does have to approve that lower rate of return. And we are recommending about a 5.7 rate of return compared to the 6.8 that it's currently at. And then reducing the pilot, again, that would be done by resolution, and it doesn't need PSC approval. The only con is if you would reduce that further than what it is or set that to 0, that would have a negative effect on the general fund. So that's why we're recommending freezing where it's at. So just letting you know that when we're evaluating this, we are seeing that the PSC math is too high. We don't feel that your rates need to increase by what their math determines. So we're gonna file that application, freezing the pilot, arguing for a lower rate of return by supplying them with our long-range cash flow analysis. And again, that is subject to PSC approval, so where we submit that, we may not receive that.
So if we go with the lower pilot and they don't accept it and we get the higher,
They don't need, the pilot doesn't need PSC approval. So you could set it to 0, you could set it at 92, you can set it at whatever you want.
but if
That
they
doesn't
do-
require
but
their
if they
approval.
end up at the higher rate, say the worst scenario, they just ignore it and go back to the higher rate.
There would be
Could we
the
change-
large, so
Could we
there's the,
change the pilot back then later?
you can change the pilot at any time by resolution.
And tonight, we aren't taking action on this piece.
No.
But we'd be taking action on the
The
issuance of
resolution.
the sale of the,
And I did hand out to you an
Bond.
updated one compared to what was in the packet once we got the new rates. So all of the exhibits in what I handed out tonight is updated on the new rates.
okay.
Mr. President,
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm reading this. Steve, go ahead.
so this portion is just for what's not covered under the Clean Water Fund, correct?
Correct.
Have we talked to the DNR on the Clean Water Fund as far as the length, the term of that money? I know there was possibly 20, maybe taking it out to 25 years, is that correct? Is a possibility?
I think there was discussion and they had to look at the,
Asset life.
yeah, and they determined, but yes, that discussion was had. I
And
can't tell you exactly where we ended up, but
Did it get approved to go a longer term or no?
I don't know offhand.
Okay, in other words, my
I
question
don't,
is,
I think it was
that
20
77%
years.
increase in water rates is based on the Clean Water Fund at 20 years or 25 years?
I would assume the 20 years.
Okay, so if we did get approval at 25, we could bring it down further.
Potentially, yes.
Okay, but we don't know what those numbers are.
I have to assume that Brian knew when he was putting this together what
Right, and
it was at, and I believe it's at the 20 year.
yeah, I could look, but
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I know we're still working at getting that lengthened out to 20.
I was told that it wasn't going to make a difference on the payment.
That's what he said when he moved.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I wasn't part of that.
Yeah.
It should make some difference. I mean, it should
Because
lower.
it said the formula is based on a return on investment, so how you fund it doesn't impact that.
Okay. 'Cause that's a heck of an increase, 77%.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's
For water
best
rates.
case.
yeah.
It's not, we're hoping to get about 50%. But it looks like that's not gonna happen.
That's why at the last meeting, I asked if everybody's going to be running, because we are going to have to be the ones explaining this. This isn't going to just be Vicky, or Tammy or Lisa. I mean, we have to do it, but the reality is, somebody that's got a minimum bill, and it's $45, it jumps up to 82.
Well, this is just the water portion though, that's going up
Yeah.
27%, not the whole bill.
Yeah,
Correct.
But still,
yeah.
yeah, that'll be significant. Water's about a third of our cost, so our overall will be going up, yeah.
I'll make a motion that we approve the Village of Cambridge Resolution 2023-12, which is a resolution authorizing the issuance and sale of an 899,000 water.
889, I had a typo.
889?
Yes.
Okay. All right, I stand corrected. $889,000 water system revenue refunding bond for the Village of Cambridge.
I'll second.
Okay, discussion? We talked and listened to this thing, so we don't have a whole lot of choice. Okay, roll call, please.
Trustee Hollenbeck,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Reinig,
Yes.
Franklin, Whitmer,
Yes.
McNally.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Appreciate it, yeah. Okay, okay, now we move on to loader rollout. Okay,
In your packet, I did a memo.
Three options.
Um, That's it. So back in 2021, we entered into an agreement with Brooks Tractor for a rollout program on our compact wheel loader. It was worth $114,300. We did trade in our New Holland, received $53,000, so we cut a check at that time for $62,300. So we own the loader at this program. Under the rollout program, every 2 years, we pay $6,000 and receive a new loader. We are limited on the number of hours we can use it though. And 600 hours over that 2 years. Currently, we're about 50 miles short of that, and we have until May for the new, when the rollout would happen. So we have a couple options. We can continue using it, trade it in May. They estimate based on our usage, if we continue using it as we do, could be approximately $1,600 additional for the over miles or hours if we continue using it. We can stop using it before we hit the 600 hours, trade it in May with this for the $6,000. But that is leaving us without it for a number of months, particularly through the snow period. The third option, because we own it, we could just keep the one we currently have and stop the rollout program. I know Todd said if we do that, he would like to then see us keep that $6,000 every 2 years or $3,000 a year set aside as down payments for future, kind of starting that capital improvement plan for future equipment. So those are kind of the three options we have. We talked about it at the Public Works Committee because we came up on it. I talked to Chuck. We decided to bring it right to the village board to give direction to Public Works on how we want to.
What's your
proceed.
recommendation, Todd?
What we figured out already, we sat down and figured it out. We talked about what's been going on was, we were doing yard collection every week with this thing and everything else. And we think that we could tame it. We think that we could tame those hours the next time around.
Next
And,
year?
If we're not gonna do, I feel, this is what I feel, if we're not going to set $6,000 aside every 2 years for at least 10 years, because I know the loader can last 10 years. And if we're not gonna do that, then we should just go ahead and pay the price of the turnout and pay the $1,000 or
So option 2 isn't really an option, is what you're saying. We should go with either option 1 or option 3. Option 2 would be stop using it and trade it in May. So you're saying, let's take that one off the table.
we need that machine.
Okay, so option 1 or option 3 is really what we need to consider.
I feel you do.
Okay,
I feel if you're not gonna save that $6,000 for that 10 years, for when you go into your next trade-in, you know, so you can trade this in later on, and use that as a trade-in too, that you should go ahead and pay the, if we go over, which is, he's estimating at 64 hours, is what he's estimating. And that would be $1,600 more than the $6,000.
so, so with this,
It'd be $1,600 more than that.
yep, so, yep, so with this program, we don't, every 2 years we get a new? Every 2 years we get a new one, and because we already paid in full for the one we have, every 2 years, it's just that $6,000.
Right, as long as we can stay within the 600.
Right, as long as we can stay within the $600.
Chuck, what,
In a brand,
Without the use of that machine, because we're not collecting the use.
in a brand new one costs about 60,000, did you say that, or did I mishear?
No, it was 114.
Wow.
And 10 years from now, who knows what that's going to be
Yeah,
more
I
than
like
that.
option number 1.
I think it's option number 1, too.
Chuck, what's your take on this? You had this committee.
I was thinking option 3. But yeah, you're right, prices might go up and that 6,000 might only cover half of it.
Right.
Okay.
Then we're going to be in the problem in 10 years again.
Gotcha.
And while this board says, yes, let's put the 6,000, we might not all be on the board for the next 10 years, and who knows what somebody else is going to do.
That's not a certain, okay.
Yeah.
For option 3, I also want to know, like, maintenance costs for the next 10 years, what,
That has to be.
you gotta calculate that in there. It's not gonna be just set it and forget it kind of thing.
Yeah.
To maintain it, yeah.
Yep.
Although the tires, didn't it say in this that the tires are ours that we purchase and they go put on the new one?
Those are, yeah, the tires are ours, it's just like the Bobcat, the tires are ours, if it's the same machine.
Okay.
Because we changed from a tractor to a loader.
Mhm.
You know, loader tractor to a loader, which meant that we had to have,
Yeah, new
loader
tires.
tires on
Yeah.
it. But if we go to another loader of the same, which would be in May, and we wanted to upgrade, it would cost us the $6,000 plus. Saying that we go 64 hours over,
Yeah.
it'd be $1,600.
And like you said, you've been, as soon as we realized we were at about 500 hours, we've had this discussion and trying to trim back the usage, but.
And now that we're collecting only 2 times a month instead of every week in the summers, that's going to help.
And not having snow for the rest of the month will help.
That will help.
Use for snow removal.
We're not getting the snow, so we're not pounding hours out of it right now either.
When I read this, Chuck, I think I also lean towards number 3, but if, after this conversation, I'm thinking 1 is probably a better option for us.
Chris?
Yeah, a couple questions. Or one question, one comment. So budget-wise, audit and finance, what has been budgeted for?
The 6,000.
6,000, okay. And then the comment is, for you, Todd, that's just another thing that you're gonna have to manage throughout the next year. If we go with option 1, you're gonna have to manage those hours, right?
Right.
Right,
And
yeah.
that's what we've been working on right now.
Right.
We're talking about what we can do to reduce the hours of this machine, so we're not
Mm-hmm,
pounding away at the hours of it, so the next time round, this doesn't happen.
I gotcha.
And those hours are, it's in operation. It's not just hours that it's running, because you could have a idling.
Idling is hours.
Yeah,
Yes, whenever it's running on those hours.
yeah. So you don't idle it too much.
Is
You
there,
have to idle down a little bit, let it idle before you shut it off.
Wha-
We try not to
yeah.
let it sit and idle.
Yeah, okay.
Well, plus it's bad for the environment to do that anyway.
Thank
Okay.
you.
so what's the life of the hours? I mean, the economics here don't make sense to me from the vendor's point. Whoever's doing this deal, if it's $114,000 and they're gonna give you a new one every 2 years for $6,000.
We traded in an old one, and received $53,000, and we paid $62,000 up front. So we paid the $114 with the trade-in
Yeah,
and the initial payment.
but put yourself as the vendor. You're
But-
selling, you're gonna give us a new machine every 2 years for $6,000, and the machine's, but it
And sell.
depreciates more than $6,000 in 2
It's-
years if it's $115,000.
But they're giving us a good bill,
That's their
Bill, who
problem.
cares? That's,
I'm sure they're in it for
They actually, you can get like 8,000 to 9,000 hours off those machines. You know, they are diesel for one.
So the life is more like 20 years. That makes, okay. If it's a 20-year life, that makes more sense, but not a 10-year.
So with that being said, I'd like to make a motion to continue using the loader, trade it in May, pay for the extra hours, and that would be anticipated that it would be approximately $1,600 if we have a normal winter. If it's less,
And we're gonna keep it tame. We're trying to tame it down to keep the price down, if we have to go that route.
so in short, option number one.
Okay, further discussion?
And when do you have to give them notice by?
He has to have the notice by the end of the year.
Another, okay.
how,
My concern is we're $500,000 short on our on our fund. From our discussion, we just went through 300,000 short on this year and 200,000 on next year. It sounds great to spend it, but, you know, somewhere we gotta figure out how we're gonna reduce spending.
well, we can figure out where else in the public works budget that what we can reduce in order to make up for having to pay for that.
Tree and brush, you've worked with Alliant to get some of that cut down. So there are ways to weasel it out.
Okay. I mean, we're looking at 200,000 weasel, not
Well,
6,000.
even the proposition that you made, Chuck, with having it every other week, you're saving on labor costs, you're saving on gas and the utility of the machinery, so we'll be able to reap the benefits of that by next year's budget. But I mean, I'm not patting ourselves on the back quite yet, but, you know.
Okay.
So I have one question. So this $6,000 every other year, for how long? I mean, how long is it only going to be $6,000 every other year?
That's what the deal is, $6,000 per year.
And is it a 10-year?
But, right, the length, for a 10-year.
Yeah.
And then at the end of 10 years, if they continue this kind of program, most likely there'd be another dollar amount there.
They have to renegotiate.
Yeah.
Okay.
And at any point, we still own the machine.
Oh, at any point, we own whichever machine
own the
oh,
machine.
okay.
We own
All
the
right.
machine right now.
Yeah, that is a good deal. So when we opt out, we're still going to have a machine that's at most 2 years old. Oh, wow, okay. All right, I think
All
that's
right.
kind of okay.
Any other questions, anybody? Okay, roll call, please.
Trustee Christ,
Yes?
Reinig,
Yes.
Strickland, Whitmer,
Yes.
Hollenbeck,
Yes,
McNally.
Yes. All right. We've got this planned out. We still have to sell naming rights for this piece of equipment, and then we'll be home.
Now?
I come up with this, and it doesn't happen, but,
Well, you put your money there.
yeah, okay, all right. Yeah,
Invest in it.
all of it.
Didn't name you.
Yes. Village Board Meeting, December 26, 2023. Lisa, looks like we're not going to have a meeting. We,
So you guys want to be here on December 26th?
I make a motion to not have a meeting on December 26th.
okay.
I'll second.
All those in support, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. No meeting. Gary, you're going to get off that day. Okay. So. All right. Moving on, item F, authorization for the clerk, administrator, and the treasurer to approve checks, providing the board with a list of all checks sent out after December 12th, 2023. I think this is customary if we're not going to have the meeting, so somebody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to authorize the clerk, administrator, and treasurer to approve and sign payables from that need to be paid before our next meeting.
Okay.
I'll second that.
All right. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Carries. Foundation grant request. How are we doing on these, Lisa.
I'm waiting to get any recommendations. Virginians did come in. I should be getting a quote for them. They are coming in with a quote to redo the Amundsen room, the hallway out here, and as a separate line item, the hallway upstairs, the old court office, the police office. So they'll be coming in with a quote. I was going to talk to staff at staff meeting tomorrow. We also want to lump in with that, take out that wall in between the current police office and the court room, the old courtroom.
Oh, to
So
make
it's
that
been
one
talked
office instead of two?
Yeah, so once the court moved over, it was always talked that the police would be able to expand to that second room. It's, right now, it's a wall with 3 closets in it, so it's not a supporting wall or anything. So I was gonna talk to staff to see if we could get a quick quote, or if it's something they felt comfortable that they could do to add that as part of that line item. There was discussion about including the LBK Park again. Last year we did do it with matching funds. We do have additional funds this year, so so those are the 2 items that I have received. If you guys have any other requests, this has to be in by the end of the year, so
You need them verbal or written?
written is
Preferred?
probably better, you know, if anybody has anything now, and then we can put together the writing, but,
On the floor, wasn't there a moisture problem, and that's the reason why it's all?
no.
What
Well,
was it?
This is original flooring. It has, we've had issues with it popping up. The discoloration is, the cement layer underneath, as it changes, the floor's not dirty, it's worn out where the cement has raised. So any new flooring they do, they will be coming in, smoothing it.
Okay,
and
all right. That's part of the,
Yeah,
whatever we're
that would
looking
be
at.
part of
Okay,
it.
all right. So if we want any proposals, anything has to get into Lisa and
Yeah.
in writing and submit it before the end of the year, and I'll carry it down again. Get
I'd
all
like to see about getting some electricity out at the yard waste shed. And I think that that would probably be a fairly easy request, because they can pull up the conduit that's there from the tower, right?
I don't know if they can do that or not.
Right. But anyway, I'd like to, you know, maybe cap it at a couple thousand or whatever it would take to get some electricity out there.
1901 could give us.
Get some cameras out there.
Yeah, we need to. Right. And lights too, I mean, as,
Okay. Anybody else have anything they want to throw in?
I was gonna say LBK Park. Put that in again.
Yeah.
Keep the budget.
Okay. All right, those are 3 items. Electrical, flooring, LBK. All right, if you have anything that comes up, and you're talking to people, you think of something, please get that to Lisa, because those are due by the end of the year. Okay, moving on to Village of Cambridge Resolution 2023-13 regarding approval of election inspectors for the 2024-25 term. Lisa, I see a long list of names here.
Yep. State statute, we have to appoint the election inspectors every 2 years. Any that you see with the CI after them are certified chief inspectors. Any that have an R after them were provided to us by the Republican Party as requests. We'll note none of those people do live within the village. They are all within Dane County, which is allowable under state statutes. So we have them on our list. The rest are all village residents. I will say, last time we had the list, I did reach out to everybody that the Republican Party had put their names forward. They either declined, they were going to different municipalities, some went to Madison, or they did not come to training. And then therefore couldn't work for the election, but, so that's kind of the list. All the village residents are existing workers that have been working, so.
This is my ignorance, but are there any from the Democrat Party?
They did not submit any names.
And there's nobody from the Independent Party?
Nope, the Republican Party is the only one that submitted names.
And they don't really even show up?
They haven't in the past.
Okay.
And I would imagine Paula's name would get stricken from this list.
No,
No?
no, because I can't serve at the
If
spring
she is on the
election.
Spring,
ballot,
okay.
But I could do the November election.
I got you.
If you're on the ballot, you can't work. I also usually lean toward if it is, if Paula weren't up this year, if I had enough workers, I still wouldn't have her work
she does.
Yeah,
for
I
the
got
local election.
Makes sense.
But other elections.
But we can still call people even if they're not on here once we get closer, because didn't we do that with COVID?
During COVID,
Yeah.
we had issues where we didn't have workers, and we can always update, the board can approve workers at any time. During COVID, it was looser. They called in National Guard, came and helped. You came and helped, Mark. Family members were coming and helping, so there was a severe shortage of workers during
Okay,
the height of COVID.
all right. Does anybody want to approve this list of names here for election inspectors?
I'll make a motion to approve the Village of Cambridge Resolution 2023-13 regarding approving election inspectors for the 2024-2025
Bless.
term.
All right. we
I'll
got a
second.
Second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. That carries. Now we're going to move on to unfinished business. Start with dancing goat sampling. And where are we at on this thing? Steve, you wanted to talk, and I know, Jane, you've got some. Why don't we...
Chris, do you want to start as chair of the committee?
Yeah.
Where we're at?
I think a best way forward with this is have Steve come up, state his piece. I have my opinion, and it differs from Steve's, but give him the chair, and so the board can hear it, and then we can go from there.
In your packet, just FYI, Steve is coming up. I do have the proposal that we had asked Dan Greavy from MSA and Jane to put together as a response to the proposal that Dancing Goat had given to us. I have also shared with you a proposal that Steve had put together as a member of the Water and Sewer Committee.
Oh, thanks, Lisa. I brought copies of that,
Yep.
but they already have it.
Yep.
Perfect.
And just a little preface before this, we did ask Steve to come up with a proposal just based on his experience with both COWC and water and sewer. So without further ado.
Thanks. I'm Steve Struss, village resident and a member of the Water and Sewer Committee. Thanks for taking the time to listen. So as Chris, as Chair of Water and Sewer, explained, we're looking at this issue out at the wastewater treatment plant of high strength waste coming through occasionally. And a couple times it actually knocked out the treatment plant, killed all the good bacteria that treats the waste. And our superintendent out there, Steve Sainsbury, had to bring in additional chemicals, had to bring in, reseed it with, from another treatment plant to get it back up and running. More recently, there's been a couple of incidences that didn't knock the plant out, but were a strong impact, and he had to do some additional chemical addition, additional aeration to bring it back to normal. So it hasn't happened every month even. It's been a couple of times a year, but when it does happen, it's a real concern. And especially the one time we exceeded our discharge limit and had a report to the DNR. So it's a serious problem. But the only thing we really know for sure is that it's coming from the village of Cambridge as opposed to the town of Oakland. We have two waste streams coming in,
and those are both monitored. So we know that it came from Cambridge, but we don't know within the village who produced that high-strength waste. And it's not always the same issue. I mean, at one time, it kind of smelled like alcohol. Other times, it didn't. And sometimes it was black, and sometimes, different colors. So we're not convinced that it's come from any particular source, but one likely source is the distillery, just because they deal with some very concentrated waste and fairly high volume. So my proposal is that we do some initial sampling at their discharge sewer to determine what's coming off of their system, and if that is in fact the source of the high-strength waste that's causing problems at the treatment plant. The couple of options that we have before us with the sampling station is you can put in what's known as a full flow proportional sampling, which monitors the volume coming out of the plant or out of the facility, and then samples just at certain times based on that flow. Another option is to sample just every hour for 24 hours and take a 24-hour sample, and every day that sample's taken and tested for the strength of the waste, known as biological oxygen demand, and the total suspended solids. We did have precedent for this when we had Melster Candy in town. There we knew they were consistently putting out a high strength waste. They dealt with a lot of food, sugars and things, and we knew that daily they were putting out a high strength waste. So there we put in a full proportional sampling, measured the flow and the concentration. Samples were taken daily, and we actually charged a surcharge for them treating that additional load beyond what's normal domestic waste. So that would be an option, and like I said, there is a precedent for it, and it's allowed in our ordinances. However, in the case of the distillery, to retrofit this in would be about $50,000, $40,000 to $50,000 is the estimate to them, and they'd be strictly at their cost, and they'd have to pay for all the sampling, which is about $35 every time it's run. So there's a significant cost to them. The other option that I'm proposing is the 24-hour sample, and samples are taken randomly, or they're taken daily, but then I describe how we could randomize it so that the dancing goat wouldn't know which samples are going in for testing, and so they couldn't modify their operation to affect that. And so, say in a given week, it'd be a 50-50 chance, just literally a flip of a coin, which ones are sent in for testing and which ones weren't. And then so on an average, it'd be 2.5 samples a week that would go in. Some weeks it might be 2 or 1. Some days it might be 3 or 5. Who knows? But on average, it'd be about half the days would be sampled. So this would give us a baseline. It would tell us if we're getting some high hits, very concentrated waste coming off, say over the next 6 months to a year, then I feel we could require for them to go to a full-blown, full proportional, flow proportional, sampling station. The sampler that they would purchase now for doing the 24-hour sample could be adjusted. The time clock could be adjusted to go to full proportional, so they wouldn't have any additional expense there, but they'd obviously have to put in the flow measuring equipment, and so that's where the extra $20,000 to $30,000 would come in. But again, that would be, in my opinion, that would be after we have clear evidence that they are producing a high-strength waste. The last time, just recently, a couple weeks ago, there was another hit at the treatment plant, and Steve contacted the Dancing Goat, and they said that the only thing they did the day before that was they cleaned out a tank, and they said it was 30 gallons because they actually knew what the cleaning cycle was for that tank. And so it's very unlikely, in my opinion, that was what the problem was at the treatment plant. Then again, we don't know you know, where this came from. So I see this as a discovery. You know, this is our most likely source, but initial sampling will give us the information we need to know whether it is in fact them. If it's not, we can move that, you know, we have to look at other sources. And if it is them, if this does identify a problem, then I feel we should require the full flow proportional sampling.
Did they tell you what the cost savings would be for the equipment that they would need under your plan versus what we had proposed earlier?
No, MSA did, the engineers, it was their estimate.
But do you know what the estimate was?
For the cost, they were very rough numbers.
About $20,000 for this, what I'm proposing, and a 40 to 50 is what MSA said for the full proportional. I heard upwards of 70. 70? Yeah. From the GOAT.
Yeah, well, they might have inflated. So, I just feel like if we had hard evidence that it is them, then I'd say, yeah, just like Melsters, we should require the full flow proportional. But without that evidence, I don't think it's fair to them to do it. That's just my opinion.
So go with your plan, you're saying $20,000.
Yeah, I believe it'd be.
And they would pay for that?
Yes, it's all.
Okay, and then if we went to the full plan, would it be an additional 50 or would it
No,
just
it'd
be
be
another
an
30?
additional 30.
Okay,
because,
all right,
They'd
that
have
makes
to put
sense.
a new manhole with a
Okay.
partial flume and measuring, yeah.
So it would be partially completed with this
Right.
plan already?
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, so you could step it in, exactly,
got you.
Chuck. It'd be, yeah, you could, what they spend now would not be wasted.
Right.
Yeah, it'd
Okay.
be an addition to it,
Makes sense.
yeah.
As long as we're doing this, I gotta believe that they're doing unique things out at that plant that we identified through some microbiology study. I mean, could we take a sample of theirs
Well,
and
they,
determine that this unique ingredient,
Mhm.
whatever's in their waste, and then if we get another one, we get another issue, can we look and identify whether that's coming through?
that, cleaning agents too is another thing, Bill, is that if they're using what's quaternary, I think it's called quaternary,
Caustic.
caustic, yeah,
If
caustic
it's unique,
solutions.
you know, if it's unique
That
to
can
their
take a real hit.
process,
Yeah.
that we
So-
could identify through some high-tech
And,
microbiologists.
right, and Steve's had a concern about that. And the Dancing Goat is actually talking to their chemical supplier now to see if there's any cleaning solutions that could be a problem.
But I'm saying take a sample of their waste now
Mhm.
and get that tested by some
It differentiates per their
individual that,
operations.
Right,
you know, is
beyond,
cutting
you're
edge,
saying
can
beyond just,
identify things that we can look for
mhm,
that might be causing the issue as evidence of where it might be coming from.
mhm. Yeah, it's definitely a possibility.
So I had asked at the last board meeting that this get kicked back to water and sewer so we could discuss it, because there's some subject matter experts that are there, Steve being one of them, and then getting some input from Steve Sansberry. But it is a Village of Cambridge decision that needs to be made. And, we have the luxury in this situation of, asking our subject matter experts at MSA, asking our lawyer, but also the umbrella that really covers us is our ordinance, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we paid MSA to do this study, to come up with this proposal. We paid Jane to do it as well. So there is some financial obligation that we've already paid out for this proposal. And I'm all along the lines of let's rip off the Band-Aid on this situation. And what prompted that is this event that happened just a couple weeks ago. Now, the silver lining to that, the good news on that, is communication flowed great. There was an event that happened. Steve Struss reached out to the Dancing Goat. That's how it's supposed to happen. But the fact of the matter is, that led me to my decision from water and sewer standpoint is I don't want to keep going back to the well on this discussion. And I'm looking at MSA's and Jane's, and it meets all of our parameters. Now, one question I have for you, Jane, is there any way we would get pushback from the customer on your proposal?
Well, definitely, they have pushed back, but,
Legal standing pushback?
No. The options that we have are to require more. If you know, it is up to the, in our ordinance, it is up to the village to approve the plan. We can throw them a bone and invite their input like we did.
Right.
We're not required to do that. So it is up to the village. The reason it's up to the village is because it's the village's duty to make sure that we don't have high-strength
Right.
wastewater going into the treatment plant.
Right, so that's where I stand with the sampling plan, and I'm willing to make a motion right now to approve the proposal from Dan Greavy of MSA and Jane Landretti, our village attorney, for the Dancing Goat Distillery wastewater metering, sampling, and testing requirements, dated November 10th, 2023. And I'd ask for a second.
So just to be clear, that's the full plan.
It's in your pack.
Okay.
And again, Steve, the reason is we keep having these events, and I get fearful. You know, I know we're overlooking what we can do for Cambridge, but I also have to be cognizant of Steve Sainsbury and his licensing out there. And these events can continue, you know, put him in jeopardy as
But we
well.
don't have hard evidence that it came from the goat. In fact, he contacted them and they did not have a discharge that time.
You know, that's the reason to do the sampling.
Well,
I
and
try
I'm-
not to.
And I'm not arguing to not sample.
Right, but,
I'm just saying.
and I don't want to weigh in on any policy
have to
decisions. I really try hard not to do that, but I was at the DNR as a water attorney for almost a decade, and now our firm does a lot of work on behalf of municipalities who have a WPDS violation. And that is the burden of all the ratepayers, and it is a ton of money. You know, after you get a notice of violation, if any of these had amounted to a hit where we had a WPDS permit violation, it's a big deal, and it's bi-weekly calls with the DNR. It's hiring a consultant to work through those. I mean, it's a really onerous, heavy lift for all of the ratepayers. And so I don't mean to make light of the $40,000 or $50,000, but in the context of a WPDS permit violation, that is a big deal.
Well,
if
and we
there is
understand
one.
that, and actually the goat understands that as well. They want to be partners in this.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Steve, you said the samples will be
Well,
collected.
Let me
Okay.
get the second. You know what, for discussion, I'll make the second. All right, now we can go into it.
You said the sample, if we went with your plan, the samples would be collected at the same time each weekday, right? Is there any way if they were trying to skirt around us, they could dump their waste at night when if they know what time of day to bypass, if it was at the same time?
It's a 24-hour sample, so it's taken
Oh, gotcha. So it's
once an hour
continuous.
so it's a composite.
Okay.
Yeah. Throughout the day.
Well,
Is there a way
So,
we could go back to the DNR with this plan and say, we have an issue, like you said, we don't know where it's coming from, we suspect it may be this is our plan, and get them to buy on so they don't come back later and
no.
That's a possibility, yeah. I mean, we have the contact with DNR at the wastewater treatment plant.
But why would we want to raise it to their attention?
why not? Why not work
Well,
with these people?
Yeah.
Because we have an ordinance that says what's supposed to be happening.
It is waving the flag that we are not enforcing the ordinance that we have, which is a very standard ordinance.
But we don't know it's the dancing goat.
That's exactly why you have the ordinance, is
So-
to respond to that scenario, to
But why don't we
to
put it on
find out
every
who it is.
business in town?
Well, that's my question.
Yeah.
So what other businesses in town should also be doing this water sampling? What's the criteria for having to sample water according to our?
It's
Or-
any industrial source. So,
Yeah, the ordinance doesn't speak to that. It is it is whatever generates a concern that creates the possibility that triggers the need to have an ordinance. The village board is not ever required, there's no specific standard for when when that requirement is triggered. It's its authority to respond where there are high-strength wastes.
So do you have any guess how many other places in town might?
You know, the winery is a possibility, but it's more of a commercial kitchen there, and we've talked to them. They don't dump any, you know, one time we thought it might have been wine that was coming in, but they said they didn't dump any wine at that time.
Who does the wastewater operator suspect?
He doesn't want, he does not want to get in the middle of this. He will not say.
Can I just give a little history and the timeline on things? And I'm not trying to put you on the spot, Steve. I know July 25th you came before this board, and in the minutes it says, you know, that it was similar to when Melsters was here. Our ordinances give the village board, and you urge the board to follow our ordinances. And you did say that you believe it is highly likely that the issues are coming from the Dancing Goat, as they are a major user and their product could be causing these types of issues. At that time, we did go to Dancing Goat. We said we have a sampler you could use to start taking just some initial samples. We met with them. They said no, thank you. Per the letter from Jane, we asked, okay, come to us with a plan. They came to us with a plan that included the flow monitoring, as well as a lot of additional stuff. That's when it came back to this board, and this board said, let's have Dan and Jane look at it. They kind of took their plan, got rid of the
Implemented sections 4 and 5 of their plan into theirs.
into this.
So there is some Dancing Goat elements to their plan.
Based on the plan that they presented to the village,
Right.
which included the flow monitoring, in the plan they provided to us. So Dan and Jane took that plan, took out the
The
narrative.
requirements on the
There was a
village and
narrative
the
there.
narratives.
narrative
Yeah.
language, and said, okay, we'll look at the plan portion, the sampling portion, narrow it down, and have this plan. It came back to this board. They said, let's send it back to water and sewer. That's when there was the discussion, when Steve then came up with this plan. So this has been going on for months. My concern is, you know, how long does it take then to get implemented? If there is issues in the future, is it too late? Have we violated our permits, and then, you know, okay, now you have to put in more, but at this point, we violated the permits, we're in those issues with DNR, and all of our ratepayers in this village are paying for those costs.
But Lisa, the sampling station won't avoid,
No, No,
if we exceed our limits and, you know, our permit, it's after the fact. We can point a finger at where it started, but it won't avoid.
But one of the things the DNR can say is, are you abiding by your ordinance? And at this point, we are not. Right?
And the point is to be proactive.
We
The
wanna be
point with
proactive.
sampling
Yeah.
is to be proactive.
And
so
Well,
that
I'm
we
not,
can
I'm not
address
arguing against sampling.
Yeah.
I'm saying let's stage it in. You know, let's start up with I'm the one that made the motion to start the sampling program. So I'm all in favor of that.
their
I'm just
plan
saying that
to us included the
we can
flow.
get some samples, we can get some good data without requiring them to spend $50,000.
So what you're saying, this
I wanna
isn't,
be
your
partners.
proposal isn't in violation of our ordinance.
I don't think so. That's the way I see it.
So,
But
I think our MSA proposal gives them a very fair timeline in completing this as well, in June 1st of 2024. They have to put this in place.
I'd like to get some data before then, but that's fine.
So,
Steve, you know, I had met with the water and sewer, and I had told you that, do we know for sure? So I get where you're at, and I listened to everything that we have talked about. I'm reading this, and what we're doing is we're relying upon a flip of a coin whether or not we're going to submit samples.
Well, you're gonna, even with the full proportional, you're gonna have to decide what samples are sent in and which ones aren't. I don't, does it say daily? What's that requirement in there? So that's gonna be
So
regardless.
the village it still has the discretion to decide the frequency.
Right.
They shall be set in at the frequency required by the village. And so that can decrease over time if the village decides.
So you're gonna have to decide that anyway, even with the other sampler. I just thought this is a good way to randomize it. And by doing it, like I said, with a FaceTime call, then, you know, we can witness it. And you're not going on there saying, oh yeah, we flipped it and it's heads today. Or it's a tails.
My other problem with this is that it's been going on. It's been going on, it's been going on, it's been going on. I mean, we had talked with them a year ago, it seemed like, about this issue and whether or not we were going to put the sample in.
Well, and I'm not saying delay. I'm saying make them do that. They ran the power already out there. They could put the sampler in next week. So I'd say let's get it going, not wait till June. But I don't know.
I mean, we can adjust the dates in the plan that we proposed. I would say,
Well, if they're going to put in a full proportional, they got to dig a new manhole. I don't know.
I think even if there are substantive things about Steve's plan that the board likes, I would recommend that we put it in the format similar to what we've done here, where it's in the active voice. It's clear whose duty, to whom each duty applies. And we don't have extra language in there saying, we're not sure if it's the dancing, it's just, I think there's certain things that we wouldn't want to probably put in a plan. We'd want to make it very pointed.
And definitive. No, this is strictly my opinion. This isn't like a legal document. No. You can do whatever you want, but But I'm just arguing against the flow proportional, basically.
They asked for it in their plan, though. That's the argument I have. In their particular plan, they
They
asked.
said flow proportional?
Yes.
Okay. Well, then I guess they're willing to spend the 50,000.
I want to say in
Okay.
section 4 of their plan.
So why don't we want to just go with their plan then?
Okay.
Yeah, the dancing goat plan.
We wanted to take out the part of their plan that put duties on the village. At least, that was my proposal.
Yeah, their plan was more of a negotiation than an actual plan of operations. And we looked at it, saw we could glean out some things that would work for us, section 4 and 5, and then went from there.
Yeah, we thought substantively it's very similar to their plan. It just is more precise in whose duty, what labs they go to, what duration, all of those things that weren't necessarily articulated in the original plan. Timelines for implementation too.
So was Dancing Goat concerned about their taking their plan and making those modifications? Did they agree to that plan?
Yeah, I mean, they wanted to give input after they saw our plan, and so that's what they've done now.
Well, I think there'll be more iterations.
Now with the motion on the table.
Yeah, well, we're reaching that point. Okay, any further discussion? I'm going to ask Lisa or Tammy, can you repeat the motion here?
Chris made the motion to approve the plan drafted by Dan Greavy and Jane Landretti, dated November 10th, 2023.
Okay, roll call, please.
Well, real quick, just under discussion, I was strictly presenting this at Chris's request as part of water and sewer, so I could have saved a lot of time, really.
No,
but-
we appreciate it.
But there it is. So, thanks.
Steve, thank you
Yeah.
for coming here. All right. Okay, we've got a motion and a second, roll call.
Reinig,
Yes.
Franklin. Whitworth.
Yes.
Hollenbeck.
Yes.
Chris.
No.
McNeely.
Yes. I know you've done a lot of work in water and sewer and, you know, the wastewater, you know, Cambridge, Oakland Commission. It's just,
And there
Thank
comes
you,
a
Steve.
point though where it's like, let's just rip off the Band-Aid. That's why I call it the rip off the Band-Aid proposal, because let's start the new year with, you know, relying on our language, so.
Okay, no, that's fine.
all right, let's move on. Item 9B, Fire Commission update. Chris?
Fire Commission update is, I believe, Sheila, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're still planning on having a Fire Commission meeting on December 20th. And we'll have an agenda forthcoming for that. On that agenda, there'll be some, you know, financials that we'll discuss and amongst other things. So that's still in the works. Yeah. Other than that, I don't have anything else to report.
Okay. Questions? All right, thank you. Lagoon Road update. Oh, we're doing really good.
Better now that you're here.
Yeah.
I'm here for a couple things, so I thought, why not cover two things at once? So appreciate the
Are
time.
they
and
both on
obviously-
the agenda?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
They are now.
A whole set of plans to be able to show it, and then here's abbreviated set of plans. And to be honest, if you could just take one and pass it along, I sure appreciate that.
Sir, can you identify yourself?
I will
for
try.
the Benefit of
We'll try.
Joe.
Joe DeYoung, MSA Professional Services. Reporting to you, obviously, for Lagoon Road. This is an ongoing project that's been going on for some time. At the direction of staff, MSA was authorized to kind of complete a set of plans for the relocation of Lagoon Drive to match up to Vineyard Drive. Some of the history behind this is a development on the west side of State Trunk Highway 134 was developed, and at the time a connection was going to be made. It was determined that it was not going to meet site distance requirements in order to be able to complete the connection. The DOT made a requirement that if a connection to Highway 134 with Vineyard Drive was ever completed, is that Lagoon Road would have to line up and make it a cross intersection cross intersection rather than two offset T intersections. So leaving Lagoon Road where it was not going to be permitted if it ever happened. With the development of the Dancing Goat and the Rick houses that are located on the property that was sold by the village to them, we acquired the land in order to be able to realign Lagoon Road and plan that out. But again, at the time, it was to have it designed and in place and ready to go as needed. Obviously, we anticipated with the TIF project that was created that that'd be a way to fund it, but it was also contingent on obviously some expansions of the Rick houses and a packaging plant that is being planned out there that hasn't occurred to date. Since I'm here today and I was obligated to get this done, I want to show you these plans and give you, again, you see the full set that goes around. You can see there's a lot more cross sections and stuff, but just to give you a feel of the improvements that we're proposing. And this does take quite a bit of effort to get down in order to improve site distance. And so the first couple pages, when you look at it, the one is an overview. On the bottom right-hand corner, you see the PPs, that's plan and profile, sheet 1, sheet 2, sheet 3, and 4. Those obviously discuss the differences between Highway 134 and eventually the last two sheets, number 3 and 4, are also Lagoon Road and Vineyard Drive and how they would tie up and the required tapers and curb and gutter necessary to make the improvements. The last two sheets are the site distance, so again, that's just more to show you what it takes in order to meet the requirements. And again, there's a lot of detail that goes into it, but I wanted to more just give you an overall update on where we're at, and then obviously get a little bit of direction. So those are kind of the sheets I just took out of the big set to have something to refer to and talk about, but it gives you a feel of the type of improvements that we're proposing. So when it's all said and done, and just to give you another understanding, we're going a total of 700 to 1,500, just shy of 750 feet of improvements are being proposed in order to be able to drop it down. We are proposing the road have a little bit of curb and gutter to match in, so you can see, I don't know if you can tell that, but up into the driveways that are located on the west side, the left side of the road, because we're kind of cutting into it, we had to put curb and gutter in order to be able to blend in. That will be permitted by the DOT. I'm not worried about it, but we're showing you what we think the improvements are going to be. With that said, I'll be honest with you, it would be my recommendation to not build it at this time. I'm not saying that it can't be done. I can understand, obviously, I'm thinking outside here, that people that are within the subdivision, the connection of any drive, maybe appreciate having a secondary access. The access to Lagoon Road currently is not an issue. Obviously, there's safe distance to provide access there, and because Vineyard does not connect at this time, it's obviously the same as what it would be today, just no access. It is a possibility that you could look into it. It's feasible for me to get it constructed next year. I would be submitting this to the DOT for approval, but my recommendation would be is to, I don't want to call it table, but just shelve it until we're ready to submit it to the DOT, because I'd hate to get my permit and access and work within right away and then not complete the work. It would be something I prefer to do at the time you're ready to do the work. It is your discretion, it's my recommendation, but again, if this is something you'd like to pursue with and get completed, I would need easements, which we're talking very minor easements to work with adjoining properties, basically to blend in the improvements, but that would be it, and DOT approval to get this done. There you go. Any questions?
So you're suggesting we do not do this project at this time?
I got my reason, but yeah. Obviously, it's safe the way it is. There hasn't been improvements, but this is a TIF project. And one of the things about TIFs is that it builds up, and so not having to borrow an ability to have some funds available when the TIF starts paying off, it makes it easier for you to fund this project as well. And so I do see that as some other reason. Now, I'm not living here, okay, so this is why you guys get to decide and tell me. But I don't know the complaints that you're getting with not having that road connected. I don't know what the residents are saying. I'm not sure exactly the number of uses that are using Lagoon Road. It's very minor, but their access is still where it is today. And so it's just my recommendation to say that unless you tell me there's reasons I'm not aware of, I could see why I would delay this. It's sitting good, and I can get it done next year. I need your recommendation, and if you say to do it, I'll get it done.
Based on where we are financially, I think we put this off. Yeah.
Do you want to make a motion to that?
I'll make a motion that we thank MSA for their work, and that we keep this proposal for a future date of implementation.
I'll second that.
Okay, discussion. I'm inclined to go that route. I haven't seen any additional rec houses, and I thought that's what we were supposed to be looking at. They were going to put the first one up, and then there was going to be a year or something like that, or 2 years, and then we'd start the construction. And until we have that, it just seems like we're putting a lot of money into an area that already has 2 entrances, and that's that whole.
Obviously, the agreement you made at the acquisition, there is plans that are kind of generally approved for a site plan that include more rick houses and a packaging plan. They have the discretion to decide, so obviously market where they're at, and what they're looking at is up to them. That's their business plan, and something obviously is not shared with us, and you can understand why. So I guess putting it out there is that, yes, the ability for them to expand, the more uses, the more trips on Lagoon, and to be fair, when the packaging plan goes in, that would be when I'm more concerned about having that access done. In there.
Okay. Any further comments?
I know that this plan also only includes the road up to the turn into the Rick House and water treatment plant areas, and if we actually did it, when we do it, I would want to actually consider how we improve the road all the way out to the Lions Clubhouse and our dump. I'll say the dump. And to the walkways, yes, to the ponds, to that whole area back there. And again, I don't think now is the right time for us to be considering that.
And just, again, so we're clarifying this, if you look at page PP4, which is about the 4th or 5th one into the thing, and you see the transition into the existing Lagoon Road, it's showing on it. And if you can see it real close, it does narrow down. We're proposing 22 feet of pavement, which is a pretty standard rural road. And you can see that isn't even matched. It only has 16 feet of pavement out there. The expansion that road, we are not going even up to the driveways, we're just going what it takes to build their intersection. You have the ability to expand the road, you have the ability to do things, but I know there's wetlands and other concerns that if you say, hey, Joe, do more, that does not require a meeting at DOT approval. That's just on your own discretion on what you want to do. I mean, obviously, you're going to beat it out, you do it at the same time, but just realize that's not what I need in order to get approval to realign with the highway and get to work with the right-of-way permit. So that's what this has been focused on, is obviously getting prepared to send it into the DOT. But, all right.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anybody else? Or I call the matter to vote. Okay, we have a motion just to do nothing. So at a later point, we're not tabling it.
Just to store it.
Storing.
Store it and keep it for when we need it.
All right. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. The record reflects Eric. All right. Joe, thank you.
Welcome.
Moving on, correspondence. We have none. Questions, referrals to staff, future agenda items.
In January, we will have the resolution on the pilot for the rate case.
Okay, all right.
A few months ago, we talked about a process, like when Chuck was gone, that he could call in to our meetings, and we're gonna look at different policies, and is that something we're gonna dust off again? Or, even, I think someone suggested we have Jamie maybe sit in on some of our meetings that I haven't all the drive time.
Telephonically.
Yeah.
We can have a discussion on that. I mean, you know.
We did, and I thought we were gonna move forward with something there.
Okay.
I'm just wondering what the status
Yeah,
is.
the motion at that time was to allow Chuck to call in, and he realized he couldn't, so we.
We also said, I thought we were gonna look into it further and develop something.
Have a, just a
I can
discussion.
tell you right now, if you're gonna look into technology to be able to call in remotely into meetings and the amount of money you would have saved from me not sitting here tonight and coming and making the drive down, we pay for itself off in dividends. Most of the communities I see now have TVs in different areas for the crowd and for staff, so you'll be able to see it with the ability with the internet and stuff. I'd be sitting at home, obviously like watching the Packers game last night, and quick calling and have the meetings that we're talking about here today. So it's not telling you you have to, but I'm telling you right now, it would be very appreciated for a guy like me to sit here, although I love listening to audits, and I wouldn't mind the opportunity to maybe call in remotely once in a while. So anyway, just
And Lisa, I just found out that the library actually has access to a Zoom account. So we would be able to sort of rent that Zoom account for the, person to call into this meeting.
Can we put that on there for the next meeting then? Oh, just wrap that all into one. Okay, anything else?
What's the latest on the website? Get updated?
We're doing uptake meeting the very first week of January. So, I'll be talking with them, and we'll be going over all sorts of things, that information that we want to have on there, all of the things on our current website, getting moved over to the process. We'll start with
What company?
Tom Webb.
Okay,
Tim's worked with them before too, so that helps.
all right. Two more items before we get to 13. Upcoming meetings, January 8th, Plan Commission, January 9th, Joint Law Enforcement, 9th again is the Village Board meeting, the 10th the Library Board, 16th Water and Sewer, and the 23rd Village Board meetings.
Water and sewer, December 19th, too. A week from today.
Oh,
And a library board
Yes.
meeting is tomorrow night as
Yeah.
well.
yes, sorry.
And
All right, tomorrow, the 13th for the library. All right. Before we get to 13, this is a time when we wish all of you a very safe and a happy Christmas, a holiday season. I'm saying Merry Christmas. I know that might be a little unusual, take the risk. I think I speak on behalf of the board, hope everybody here in Cambridge and all of you in TV land have a wonderful holiday. It's a safe one, and best wishes for a great 2024. All right. Let's go. Anybody want to help me on 13?
I'll make a motion to